Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the debrief for the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Now let's be honest, it wasn't the most thrilling of races in Baku, but I've certainly seen far worse. Actually, as we said during yesterday's race reaction stream, it felt a lot better than Baku 2016 and was definitely miles better than China 2 weeks ago. For me though, I feel like it's going to be one of those races that a lot of people go back and look at and see it as intriguing. It was a race which saw Valtteri Bottas take his second win of the season ahead of teammate Lewis Hamilton, yet another Mercedes won too, and Sebastian Vettel managed to round off the podium for Ferrari. Max Verstappen was fourth ahead of the second Ferrari of Leclerc in fifth. Sergio Perez finished a brilliant sixth place for Racing Point, with the McLarens getting double points in seventh and eighth, and Lance Stroll making sure that Racing Point also get double points after recovering to ninth, and Kimi Raikkonen, just like Alexander Albon in China, went from pit lane to points with P10. Fantastic drive. Alexander Albon narrowly missed out on points in 11th place for Toro Rosso, with Antonio Giovinazzi recovering to 12th for Alfa, but it was a poor weekend, as we'll talk about later, for Haas and Renault, with Magnussen 13th and Hülkenberg 14th, and then of course it's the two Williams boys of George Russell and Robert Kubica 15th and 16th respectively. As for the retirements list, just the four in Baku this year: Pierre Gasly, Romain Grosjean, Daniel Kvyat and Daniel Ricciardo. Let's start with Mercedes then, and that fourth consecutive 1-2 finish. It all looks rather ominous for their rivals, doesn't it? But another excellent drive from Valtteri Bottas, who has certainly shown so far in 2019 that he has got what it takes to fight for the title. Long way still to go, of course. Quite the contrast to last year, which saw him retire agonisingly close to the end of the race after picking up a puncture, and the Finner said that the win this year is perfect payback for last year. It was a tough race, even though there wasn't much going on at the front. Lewis was putting pressure on all the time, so I couldn't make any mistakes, but everything was under control, so I'm happy to see the checkered flag and get this first place. It means a lot to win. It's incredible the level we're performing at as a team. That's why I was just saying at the guys, I'm so proud to be part of that. We're all performing really, really well. For me as well, it's only my fifth win, and it feels good and pays back from last year. It's a long season ahead, but we're leading in the points with a good margin, but it's early days. I'm just focusing on my championship now, and for the moment, it is Lewis the main challenge, but we'll take it race by race. It was certainly an exciting first lap to watch as the two Silver Arrows went toe-to-toe early on, side by side for the opening three corners. Great stuff. But Lewis Hamilton feels that he was far too friendly to his teammate during that first lap, and ultimately that is what cost him the win. I didn't get the job done in qualifying, he did. Then in the race I was too friendly at turn 1 and basically gave it to him. He drove a fantastic race and made no mistakes, so he deserved the win this weekend. This has always been a difficult race for me, so this is a really good result considering. Valtteri did an exceptional job this weekend and truly deserves the win. It was a bit of an under par performance from myself, so I just need to work hard. Hamilton did lose time under the virtual safety car, apparently around about 2.5 seconds, and has since said that plans are in place to make changes to the car's dash in order to help prevent the same thing from happening again. Strangely, there have been some accusations post-race that Toto Wolff issued team orders following that first lap squabble, if you like. However, he has firmly denied that, confirming that the drivers were free to race throughout, something which I think was pretty obvious, given how hard Hamilton was pushing late on, so much so that he ran wide and over the curb at one point whilst trying to hunt his teammate down. Not generally something that happens if you're in cruise control and following your teammate home. Down at Ferrari, it was another disappointing Sunday, and although Sebastian Vettel did grab himself a podium and pretty much did all he could with that car, the pace just did not seem to be there to take the fight to Mercedes. To be fair, the German was pretty open and honest after the Grand Prix, something we've seen from a lot of drivers this weekend actually, and admitted that he felt as though he lacked confidence and consistency. The first stint was really poor. I really struggled to initially get the tyres to work. I think they were too cold and I damaged them, and by the time they were hot, they were damaged. I was really uncomfortable, inconsistent, and couldn't get a feel or confidence in the car. I think we had some pace to at least go with Mercedes and sometimes put some pressure on. It was crucial to keep third, crucial for Charles to get the fastest lap and snatch it away from the Mercedes boys. The last 4 races we weren't quite there, so we are not the favourites going into Barcelona. We have some upgrades coming and we need to chase them down. It was a difficult weekend for his teammate Charles Leclerc, and that's despite looking like the favourite after delivering some very strong pace in practice. However, where it mattered, he put his car into the wall in qualifying and despite leading for a while, never really looked like threatening the top 3. Post-race, Leclerc did initially question the team's strategy, but eventually did go on to defend them. He also added that he was not pushing after his pit stop, as the team had told him there was no chance of catching those ahead. I believe there is a reason for staying out long. I need to look at the data before commenting because they have a lot more data than I do in the car. I felt I lost a bit of time once Valtteri, Lewis and Seb passed me. We need to look into that. I asked, is there any possibility for us to come back? They told me no. After that, there was no more trying to push to catch them, but just to try and save the tyres and do the fastest lap when I had the opportunity. It could have been a very positive race, but to be honest, there is nothing wrong with Ferrari, just myself yesterday. I did a mistake yesterday and will come back from it stronger. There was some consolation, I guess, for Leclerc as he made a second pit stop late on and managed to snatch the fastest lap, and of course that bonus point. All in all, though, I have to say, not a great weekend for Ferrari. Let's hope for the championship's sake that they can at least close the gap in Barcelona. As for Red Bull, it was a fairly solid Sunday, well, for Max Verstappen at least. The Dutchman did lose some time early on battling with Sergio Perez, however he also demonstrated some very strong race pace at times, certainly during the early phase of that second stint, and genuinely at one point for me looked as though he could challenge Vettel for that final podium spot. However, unfortunately, after teammate Pierre Gasly retired from the race, the team turned Verstappen's power unit down and that was pretty much it. Despite the concern over reliability though, Max was pleased with the weekend overall. In general, we had a good race. I always had the Mercedes and Ferrari in sight and I was just trying to close the gap. At the start I was blocked and couldn't really break deep into the corner, which allowed Perez to get past me. With the virtual safety car, I think I lost too much tyre temperature and I couldn't get it back as quickly as the others. The performance in Barcelona will of course depend on the upgrades that everyone is bringing, but hopefully we can be even more competitive and close the gap even further. As touched on there, Pierre Gasly retired from the race with a drive shaft issue, but prior to that he delivered what Christian Horner described as his strongest weekend of the year, despite all the penalties of course. He did manage to make his way up from pit lane to P6 and it's such a shame he didn't make it to the end. Gasly though is taking some positives away from the race and the weekend as a whole. Things in the race went pretty well and we got to P6, but unfortunately we didn't make it to the end as I had a drive shaft failure. Overall, I'm adapting myself and we're going in the right direction. I think the car's a bit more predictable and I've changed my approach in the car too. I still need to work on some things, but each weekend it's improving and together with the team, we are going in the right direction. So, yeah, disappointment for Gasly, but Red Bull certainly showed they've got the speed to compete this year, and hopefully with those upgrades in Spain, it's going to get even closer. A lot of eyes on Barcelona after this weekend. Let's run through the rest of the field then, starting with Racing Point and what was a very strong weekend for Sergio Perez, and to be fair, a very impressive Sunday for the team as a whole. Checo qualified 5th of course on Saturday and managed to get the jump on Max Verstappen at the start of the race. And although he wasn't able to keep him at bay for long, the Mexican said that he was more focused on keeping the McLarens behind. Perez was understandably happy after the race and has said that he is now looking forward to the rest of the season. Teammate Lance Stroll had another difficult Saturday, but once again showed that where it counts on a Sunday, he can deliver after picking up those 2 valuable points. Stroll described the race as challenging but fun and is happy with the way the car is performing overall. It's been quite a quiet start for the team so far in 2019. That being said though, they have been quietly going about their business and picking up the points. They could well be one to keep an eye on over the next few race weekends. McLaren once again delivered the goods on a Sunday, grabbing that double points finish, and more importantly from Carlos Sainz's perspective, he finally managed to get his first points on the board in 2019. The Spaniard was compromised in qualifying thanks to a late yellow flag, but said that he was very happy to grab some points on Sunday and is already looking ahead to his home Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. Really good drive from Sainz. Lando Norris was pleased to come home 8th, but did miss out on 7th after the team took a gamble under the virtual safety car to try and take the fight to Sergio Perez. According to Norris, the team felt like the medium tyres Checo was running would have taken a while to switch on at the restart, thus giving them an advantage on the fresh soft tyres, but that just wasn't the case. So for Lando it probably is a bit frustrating, but looking at it from the team's point of view, they didn't stand to lose anything and so it was well worth a try. I've got to say this right now, I've been really impressed with McLaren so far in 2019. What a race Kimi Raikkonen had, pit lane to points in that Alfa Romeo, and despite his penalty, I feel like Antonio Giovinazzi did well to make his way back up to 12th place. What could have been for him though after out-qualifying Kimi on Saturday. Interestingly enough though, despite a solid recovery, Raikkonen and team boss Frederic Vasseur both felt like the team could have come away from Baku with more, with the Finn saying he was disappointed and Vasseur describing the result as damage limitation. 1 point I called damage limitation, but to be honest it could have been more. Surprisingly, there was no safety car this time, we were stuck in traffic, and whilst both Kimi and Antonio did a good job, our race was compromised. Personally, I think that Alfa and Kimi Raikkonen should be happy with that result given how compromised they were after Saturday. But then again, this just shows how far Alfa have come this season, given that 12 months ago 10th place would have been a hell of a result. Definitely another team I'm very much looking forward to watching through the rest of this season. Down at Toro Rosso, it was a mixed weekend, I think it's fair to say. On Saturday, they looked to have a seriously quick car, and at one point even threatened to end up as best of the rest. However, come Sunday, they appear to struggle for one reason or another. Daniel Kvyat was looking on for a point or two before being reversed into by Daniel Ricciardo in a very bizarre moment. And the Russian said after the race that they had struggled with tyre management and added that despite showing a lot of frustration initially, he has no issue with Ricciardo, stating, quote, he recognised his mistake and we now turn the page. Alex Albon believes that the pace was there during the race but felt as though he was left out too long before pitting, and that ultimately cost them a lot of time and I guess perhaps even a point. He wasn't all that far off Kimi Raikkonen come the checkered flag. I think it's fair to say that Haas had more than an off weekend. They struggled in qualifying and frankly never really looked like threatening the points paying positions during the race. Kevin Magnussen is already looking ahead to Barcelona after what he called a tough Sunday and admitted, quote, we didn't expect this kind of start to the season. A frustrating day for the Dane. Not as frustrating as it was for his teammate though, as he once again failed to finish his third retirement in 4 races. According to the team, Grosjean was called in to retire for safety reasons after issues with his brakes, and the Frenchman backed up what Magnussen has said after China about the team's tyre struggles and that they are being left frustrated because they believe the pace is there in the car to fight. Renault were another team who struggled throughout the weekend. Nico Hülkenberg was knocked out in Q1 and Daniel Ricciardo only just scraped through to Q2 by beating that late red flag. Race day wasn't much better for Hülkenberg as he never really looked on the pace. In fact, he actually said that he had nothing to offer, concerning for Renault. As for Ricciardo though, well, what can I say, really? He looked okay initially and was knocking on the door for a point or two. However, whilst going for a move on Daniel Kvyat, he locked up and went straight on into the escape road. The Russian couldn't make the corner and had to take evasive action, and whilst Kvyat was trying to select reverse and rejoin the track, Ricciardo had a moment of absolute brain fade and reversed straight into the Toro Rosso. Post-race, he explained that he was trying to get back to the track quickly to minimise the time lost, and admitted that because of the urgency, he didn't check his mirrors. It was just, I guess, a sense of urgency and a bit of panic, if you will, and try to minimise damage and lose as little time as possible. I found reverse and started going, and to be honest, I had no idea he was there. I guess the urgency stopped me from looking. The stewards obviously investigated the issue and rightly took action, giving the Aussie 2 penalty points on his super licence and a 3-place grid drop for the Spanish Grand Prix. And finally for this part, it's Williams and what was a very, very expensive weekend for the struggling team. A loose drain cover left George Russell with huge damage and needing to switch to a new chassis, and Robert Kubica binned it into the wall at turn 8 in qualifying, which resulted in the team having to carry out extensive repairs and the pole needing to start from the pit lane. Russell said that he was relieved the weekend was over, something I'm sure will probably be echoed at Grove, and teammate Kubica gave thanks to the mechanics for all their hard work, but did say he achieved his target for the day, which was simply to get the car to the finish. What else can they aim for, really? Fingers crossed for them, certainly the drivers, that the team can make up some ground if and when the upgrades arrive in Spain. On to my driver of the day then, and this week it's a really tough one. Valtteri Bottas was extremely good and definitely deserves a mention. Sergio Perez was on it all weekend and once again managed to deliver in Baku. Both the McLaren boys were impressive. Lance Stroll made his way into the points, and as I've already said, Kimi Raikkonen went from pit lane to P10. By the way, I've got to say, Charles Leclerc was not the driver of the day. Whilst I respect other people's opinions and their right to vote for who they want to, I can't help but feel that was more out of sympathy for what happened on Saturday rather than the race. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't absolutely dreadful or anything like that, but he was definitely not the best out there. I've struggled with this, and as much as I really, really want to give it to Kimi Raikkonen for that comeback drive, I'm just going to have to go with Sergio Perez. He was the surprise of qualifying and drove well to keep the 2 McLarens behind during the race, especially after the VSC when he was able to switch his tyres on pretty much straight away. He had a good battle early on with Max Verstappen, but just generally deserves a lot of credit for his weekend as a whole, and he once again had his teammate in his pocket. Like I said though, this one could have gone to any one of 6 drivers. Before I go, let's have a quick look at the championship standings, starting with the drivers. And it is Valtteri Bottas who's moved back to the top of the championship, 1 point clear of teammate Lewis Hamilton, with Sebastian Vettel third for Ferrari on 52 points. Max Verstappen is 4th on 51, just ahead of Charles Leclerc, who's on 47, and then a big gap back to Sergio Perez in 6th on 13, with both Pierre Gasly and Kimi Raikkonen both having 13 points on the board as well. Lando Norris is 9th for McLaren with 12, and Kevin Magnussen rounds out that top 10 with 8 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes already well clear at the top, 74 points clear of Ferrari after 4 races. That could well already be in the bag. Of course, like I've already said though, a long way to go. Red Bull appear to be falling into no man's land in 3rd once again on 64 points. It's McLaren who have moved up to 4th on 18 points, with Racing Point 1 further back on 17 in 5th, and Alfa Romeo in 6th on 13, just 1 clear of Renault, who are down to 7th. Haas have dropped to 8th and have just 8 points on the board, with Toro Rosso still on 4, and of course Williams prop up the table with nothing on the board. That is it then for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix debrief, and in the comment section down below you can let me know your thoughts on the weekend as a whole and also who is your driver of the day. Now I will be back later in the week with more content as always, and do keep an eye out over the course of this week because I will be letting you all know about some content changes as well as some new ideas that I've got going forward. So if you are interested in that, make sure you follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.